All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to tackle a topic that sounds, well, huge and complicated, but it's something that really does affect every single one of us: the global debt crisis. We're going to try and unravel what it is, who the major players are, and how in the world we might try to solve it. So, let's get into it.
First things first, let's start with a number, and it is a truly mind-boggling number. $315 trillion. That's the ballpark figure for global debt right now. So how did we get here? Well, you can think of it like the result of a really long party, one fueled by almost a decade of super low interest rates. Then the pandemic hit, and we got this massive shot of adrenaline from all the stimulus spending. But now the party's over and the bill has come due. And it's not really just a number, it's more like a giant, tangled knot that connects governments, corporations, and regular households all across the globe.
So for our first part here, let's take a closer look at this global debt knot. Because before we can even think about untangling it, we really need to understand what we're looking at and why it's tied so incredibly tight.
So what exactly do we mean when we say a crisis? Well, it's that tipping point where so many countries, companies, and people owe so much money that the risk of them not being able to pay it back, that's what we call defaulting, becomes a threat to the entire system. It's like a domino effect. If one big player goes down, it could set off a chain reaction that ripples across the whole world.
And here's why this really matters to you and me. This is not some abstract problem for economists in an ivory tower. This massive pile of debt, it affects the interest rates on your mortgage, the security of your job, the actual value of your savings, and the kind of economic opportunities that are going to be around for years to come.
Okay, so if global debt is this tangled knot, then who holds the scissors? In other words, who are the key players here? Who has the power to make the decisions that could either start to untangle this mess or honestly make it a whole lot worse?
You've basically got four main groups at the table. First, national governments. They're the ones who borrow a ton of money but also set the economic rules. Then you have the central banks, like the US Fed, the ones who control interest rates, a huge lever of power. You've also got the big international bodies, like the IMF, who kind of act as the world's financial firefighters. And last but not least, you have the private creditors. These are the big banks and investment funds who actually own a massive chunk of all this debt.
Now, what's really fascinating is how this debt is actually split up. It's not just governments, not by a long shot. You've got non-financial corporations who've borrowed huge amounts to expand their businesses. And of course, you have households with mortgages and student loans. And all of these are connected. If corporations are in trouble, that affects jobs, which in turn affects households' ability to pay their debts. And a crisis in any one of these areas puts enormous pressure on the government. See? It's all one big knot.
And that brings us right to the heart of it. How on earth do you solve a crisis of this scale? Let's walk through the four main ways you can try to untangle this enormous financial mess.
So, the options on the table are basically these: restructuring, inflation, austerity, and the most dramatic one of all, default. And let me tell you, none of these are easy choices. Every single one comes with its own set of very serious consequences. Let's break them down.
This really lays out the tough trade-offs. Restructuring is basically renegotiating the deal, which is great for the person who owes the money, but means the lender loses out. Inflation? Well, that's a stealthy way to deal with debt. The money you owe just becomes worth less over time, but the catch is it eats away at everyone's savings. Austerity means deep, painful budget cuts, which can slow down the whole economy and lead to a lot of public anger. And default? That's the nuclear option, just refusing to pay. It causes immediate financial chaos and can get you locked out of borrowing money for a very long time.
And right in the middle of all these choices is this fundamental debate: austerity versus growth. Do you slash spending and try to pay your bills right now, even if it risks a nasty recession? Or do you spend more money, often by borrowing more, to try and jumpstart the economy, hoping that you can just outgrow the problem? It is a massive, massive gamble either way you go.
So, what happens after one of these very difficult paths is chosen? What does the world actually look like, feel like in the aftermath? This is where all those economic decisions become very, very real for millions of people.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? We're not talking about numbers on a spreadsheet here. These decisions can completely reshape societies for a generation. They affect everything from social programs and jobs to the political stability of a country. The choice a nation makes really does define its future.
And the outcome is anything but certain. Depending on the path taken and a million other global factors, a country, or even the whole world, could be looking at a long, painful period of stagnation, or maybe a slow, grinding recovery, or In the best-case scenario, a pretty quick rebound after a successful deal is made. There are absolutely no guarantees.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. We've looked at the sheer size of the problem, we've met the key players, and we've seen the incredibly difficult choices they're facing. So what should we be watching for as this whole story continues to play out?
If you take away anything from our chat today, it should probably be these three things. First, this isn't just one country's problem. It's a deeply interconnected global web. Second, there's no magic wand here. Every single potential solution involves pain for someone. And third, the decisions being made right now are going to have consequences that ripple out for decades.
Which, it leaves us with one final big question to chew on. When a debt crisis is finally resolved, is the problem actually fixed for good? Or does the whole global financial system just hit the reset button, kicking off a brand new cycle of borrowing that will eventually lead us right back to where we are today? Something to think about. Thanks so much for sticking with me on this one.